What does it take to make workshops work? And how can we facilitate collaboration that sticks and leads to results? My name is Miriam Harkness, and with the Workshops Work podcast, I'm on the mission to find the magic ingredients that make workshops work. Today, you're listening to a very special episode. It's a compilation of 20 episodes and precisely the answer to the question that I asked every guest. What makes a workshop fail? And since we know that if we cannot fail, we cannot learn, pay special attention because there might be some golden nuggets in for you. Because the next question would be, how can you avoid this failure? And now, lean back and enjoy the show.
I mean, many things, no? So one way I measure success the success of a workshop is based on participation. And I always said, I do a lot of in-company, so workshops for a particular client. But sometimes I do open workshops where people, through a partnership, and people from different companies or walks of life come. And my measure of success is making sure that no one leaves the room before it ends. So, but I think that one of the key things that might make it unsuccessful or might hinder success is lack of adaptability or flexibility. Usually, I work with a lot of people. I like to design the workshops, in terms of goals, objectives, what's going to happen, the exercise duration, everything, and try to mix a little bit of theory, a little bit of exercise, a little bit of learning, so group activity, so mixing things, But you never know what's going to happen. So some things, as a facilitator, you say, this exercise is fantastic. People are going to love it. And then when you throw it, people are like, so what can you do? You can continue pushing and try people to love it, or you can, guys, this is not working, throw it away, and boom. Or maybe you allocate 30 minutes to address certain, meetings. How are we going to increase communication or feedback, whatever? And that becomes a kind of worms, and you start a lot of tensions start to show up, and it becomes like a huge thing because you're into something. So you can say, well, the next topic on the agenda is, and move on. Or you can say, look, I'm going to maybe delete something, but I'm going to give people more time because this is really critical.
Yeah.
So that flexibility, that level of adaptability is critical.
Okay, for the facilitator.
Yeah. You enter with a plan, but you need to manage the plan according to what people are really reacting to, both what they like and what they don't resonate.
I'm only laughing because, we don't want dishonest meetings, and yet, there's sure a fair amount of dishonesty going on. Let me stay, I'll go to that question, but let me stay with a piece from the prior question, first of all.
Yes.
Because when you and I were talking before starting to record on this call, you and I talked a little bit about when to start recording, and you shared something that I related to of when the record button is pressed, then sometimes it invokes a different voice from us.
Yes.
Right? Like it's somehow gets more serious. Or
hello, this is my podcast voice.
Right, your podcast voice. And what I appreciated in what you were speaking is, in the non-recording voice, often there's just a naturalness and ease and intelligence, let's be clear, and intelligence with how we're speaking with one another. So the honest meeting feels to me like there's more natural presencing with one another. And, oh my gosh, let's peek a little behind that. I think that there's an assumption in that our honest speaking or our real-time speaking with one another can be massively valuable. Like, we already know a lot of things. And the context for a meeting or the context for facilitation is very much about creating some of the conditions in which that natural knowing or natural showing up with one another is more likely. So it sounds a little controversial now, like almost too bipolar here to say, well, how about dishonest meetings? But, let's create some nuancing here. There's a lot of steps between an endpoint which is honest and an opposite endpoint which is dishonest.
Yeah.
There's a lot of blurry, murky material in the middle there that no one's being malicious about or deliberately lying about. I suppose that could happen too in some places. But I'm talking more about how we cultivate even more openness or perhaps a willingness to be vulnerable. Again, a willingness to be in some not knowing with one another. There's just patterns in there that sort of move us over towards the not quite as honest. I don't want to say dishonest, but not quite as honest with one another, not quite as open with one another.
No collaboration, no interaction. People who don't dare to say something, and sitting on the chair.
Even if it's in the circle?
Even if it's in the circle. Last week, I had a session, and one of the participants asked me during the morning, please, can we sit for a minute? And of course she was allowed to sit, but we are so active and just moving in the room that they don't sit. But they at the end, about a couple of hours, they were so tired.
Actually, maybe there is no failed workshop. There's only a certain outcome. You might interpret as as failing. Depends. I always tell the people the outcome also can be that we at the end say this is not buildable, or we should think about a totally different way to approach the topic. This can also be an outcome.
So what is for you the biggest mistake a facilitator can make?
I don't know what the biggest one is. I think a couple of things come to mind. If, let's just say, the workshop goes poorly, what things might contribute to that? The biggest thing, it's not even facilitation. I think the biggest mistake you can do is under-prepare. Because I think so much of a workshop success is in the preparation that you do, making sure that you've identified the right problems that you want to address, the right questions you want to be able to answer on the other end of the workshop, right? Understanding enough. You can have enough information to be not invaluable, but a little constraining. It is good to come in with fresh eyes and as a third party. It's also really important to understand the client, their business, the business model. So you want to do research there. I think you can over-engineer an agenda, right? And you can try to do too much. Something that I was told as I was working with some facilitation masters, as a rule of thumb, when you come up with your agenda, cut it in half. Right? You can probably do about half of the things, or things will take twice as long as you think they will. And then along those lines, you have to leave room for the close, for the decisions. And I find that that's discipline, to be able to eloquently cut off conversations because you need to get to important things.
Can you imagine, or can you think of a scene you working with a group, something went wrong, and how you fixed it?
Well, I've had, especially when I just started doing my trainings, the mistake I made was I was working way too hard. So I was giving energy and I was sending and hoping to get my audience to, participate with me. And I was exhausted at the end of the day. I could not do 2 of those workshops a week because I would completely exhaust myself. So connect to your audience right from the start and let them know that they are there to work. It's a workshop for them and you're just there to facilitate. So that would be not necessarily one moment, but especially in the beginning, that is where I went wrong, to just give too much energy and not get the same amount back.
I think workshops would fail in general if there's a lack of result focus. I am a very result-driven person, but I see that can have a big impact on the time you ask people to be together and work on a certain issue. If there's no result, it feels really like a waste of time, right? So that's the best you can do, to have this group accelerate and pursue a certain result and make that tangible.
What makes a workshop fail? When we're not clear on our purpose together, when we don't stop to listen to each other, when we decide that driving to the answer is more important than going together. There's that old African proverb, you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. When we mistake kind of the head nodding as I really agree with you, or when we don't make space for people to contribute or find their part in it. I think those are things that or I've sometimes have been invited to team buildings where actually there was one person who was the issue in a team and everybody's going to go into a team building because no one had the guts to raise with that person that their behavior was inappropriate or was a negative impact. Nobody had the guts to say it, so we're all going to do something instead of speaking truth. But the relationship hadn't been built in order to be truthful with each other either. So it's a time in the planet where it's a good moment to question power structures, how we've been treating each other, how we've been dealing with each other, what's the difference between power over and power with, and do we have the collective will, in fact, as a human capacity to learn how to host each other in the conversations that really matter.
Agendas. Predefined agendas.
Predefined agendas or predefined goals?
Predefined agendas.
What makes you say that?
I just think, how do you even know what you'll be doing when you haven't even been there yet? It's just the weirdest concept to me. And I used to do it, and then I used to ask for it from other people. And so the best you'll get from me, I guess, in that is you'll get a sense of a shape of how it might unfold with no timings on it. A rough flow of my sense of how it probably will transpire. And 80% of the time, that's not what happens. Because there's no space to breathe. And particularly if it's with a team or a group that you haven't met, like I often work with teams. If it's a team that I haven't met, and I might have only met the leader of the team, let's say, or the HR director, I haven't even sat in a room with them. How on earth can I know what's needed?
Nice one. I think I have seen some workshops where the teacher or the facilitator is not really giving a workshop. I mean, in the word workshop, there was the word work. So ideally, there would be some work done by the participants. But I have seen these workshops where the facilitator merely just sends out information, has a PowerPoint presentation and just blabbers out some theory and then hands out a paper, then asks, well, are there any questions? And then we call that a workshop. And I think that's what makes a workshop feel.
As a facilitator, do you ever find yourself stuck in a rut using the same activities over and over again? Or do you find yourself without a plan B, even though we know that things never go according to plan? That's why we made facilitator cards. I'm Meg Bolger. I'm a professional facilitation geek and the CEO of Facilitator Cards. Facilitator cards are the helpful nudge you need to get more creative in your workshops. They're a pocket-sized tool that you can use offline to create agendas and backup plans for your virtual and in-person facilitations. And for Workshops Work listeners, you can get a free set of wet erase markers to use with your facilitator cards by using the code WorkshopsWork at facilitator.cards. That's facilitator.cards and enter WorkshopsWork at checkout.
So there's many things that can make a workshop feel. I have been lately to one of the workshops. I won't mention anything about it yet. In my view, it was really painful to be there, actually.
For you as a facilitator or for the participants?
I was as a participant there, so I wasn't there as a facilitator yet. Of course, my facilitation radar was on and seeing what was going on. So first of all, it really has to do, are the right people there, right? So are the right people there and are you prepared? It's these basic things. And then when I started looking deeper into this, are there is the right energy there? Is the right intentions there? So what I saw so far is that, why it wasn't working out? Because the whole thing was really about a topic about artificial intelligence. And it was very fascinating about, to talk about these things and how it can help society and businesses. Yet there were no people from, how you say this, more expertise there.
Mm-hmm.
There were people more from a marketing and a sales perspective there. And account managers were there. And I became like, okay, wow, what is this, right? So if your intentions aren't right, it doesn't matter, because this is just an example I'm giving.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really challenging for the facilitator. And it can, if there's no facilitator, there's a guarantee there's almost 100%, let's call it like that. There's almost 100% guarantee it's going to fail. If your meeting is, or the session or retrospective or planning or whatever event you're holding, and you really want to look in the future and determine your next plan for your company, your department, or your team, and one of the person is really there because he's really annoyed and frustrated, and he wants to, and literally just want to, shout out and do whatever he wants and hijack the whole group dynamics. That's what we are talking about. So it's really challenging. So as a facilitator, once again, I'm saying you really have to look at the group and see if even their intentions, are aligned with the group purpose. Mm-hmm. So that's why the preparation, that's why all, if you look at all these facilitation techniques, they all start with, hey, make sure that you are prepared. Make sure that the teams or people know what you're going to do in this session, right? Yeah. And they have to consent with this, or, in a way, they have to agree with this. You have to say like, no, I really want to do that. And this is also indirectly referring back to the intention that people have. Mm.
Well, it depends on what kind of workshop, because one thing is a workshop that you need to deliver solutions for operational issues within a company. And another one is it's a workshop where you only want people to learn or to come together or build community or whatever. No? My specialty is more in-house workshops that you need to solve real issues that have some kind of impact in the bottom line. Mm-hmm. That's the most, what I am best at. No? And then I say that there are like 5 prerequisites that need to be met. If not, it will fail completely. Mm-hmm. So, and these are prerequisites that are either or. There are other things that are more analogic. No, you can do them better or worse, but these ones is either or. No? Mm-hmm. And one is the task needs to be complex without known solution and potentially conflictive. Mm-hmm. Just like that. If there's no potential for conflictive, if it's a simple task and the solution is known, you don't do a workshop. Yeah. You do something else. No, you invite people to give them the information and so on. So that's one of the things. Then the second criteria is willingness to be transparent with the constraints and the issue and the constraints, and willingness to trust. Or if you don't, that the participants will. And I say willingness to trust because it doesn't mean that you really trust. Because that can be more difficult, but willingness to try to trust. And if you can't, act as if you did. Mm-hmm. No? One of the biggest, most usual interventions in this kind of workshops is to, when the owner after a couple of hours says, but they are not speaking about what they need to speak about, they say, let's go for a coffee. We go for a coffee and let them work. You act as if you trusted by just leaving the room.
So according to you, Miriam, is that an appreciative question?
It's not. It's not, but it's one of my general questions.
I know.
And it's funny that you're pointing this out, because it actually went through my mind. I was like, okay, it's getting to a point where I at least need to ask the question, how can I transform it into an appreciative way? And then I thought, no, that's my standard question. I'm curious to hear how you reply to it.
Yeah. No, it was just funny because I thought fail. It's like, how do I look at failure in a way that can be appreciated, actually? Mm-hmm. Because, so even if I failed, and for me, failing is if voices were not heard within the group. And especially in the times we are in today, you realize that some voices come out loud and clear and talking, and there are some voices that are not heard, and that's where we're going to be caught up with the problems later on. So for me, workshops do not work when I suddenly realized that not everybody was heard. Mm-hmm. Maybe they didn't feel heard, which is even worse, but we didn't hear them.
Yeah.
And again, this approach is kind of a safety net because we work in smaller groups, bigger groups. So usually everybody gets a say at one point. Mm. So for me, a workshop does not work when all the voices are not heard. That's for sure. I think I had put other things in there. What else could I say?
If you think what is a failed workshop, it's all about what did you want to achieve? Mm-hmm. And then compare that with what did your client want to achieve, mm-hmm. or your the person who gave you the mandate. And then what is the goal of the participants, and mm-hmm. what did they want to achieve, or mm-hmm. did they want in general from this day, from this workshop? From these different points of view, you can already get a lot of different answers. Mm-hmm. And a workshop has failed probably if one of these three parties is not happy mm-hmm. with it. And that means there was maybe not the right alignment.
Yeah.
The alignment didn't happen.
And to what extent is the facilitator responsible for such a failure?
There is a lot that a facilitator can do. Mm-hmm. Sometimes things just fail. It's the way it is. For me, the responsibility of the facilitator is at the very beginning. If we accept a project that we feel is maybe something is not feeling right here, mm-hmm. but okay, I need the money or I need to do something with this client, and we do it anyway, that's for me going to be one of the most challenging projects. Because you also don't do it for the right reasons, or you're not completely aligned with yourself, right? And I think often the problems that occur in workshops are these kinds of situations where you know from the beginning that it's maybe sponsors don't have the right engagement, or people come here and they know it's for the show, mm-hmm. and then it's just a communication workshop. So it's this context that I think we have to feel as early as possible, and sometimes not do the workshop. Mm-hmm. For me, I'm also always talking about purpose. It's also what is the honest intention behind it. If you do a workshop, then what is the consequence of that? Are you ready mm-hmm. to live with the consequence of your workshop? And that's something to check also with the sponsors, and when your own gut feeling, I guess.
Oh God, so many things. Acts of God, lightning striking, planes not coming, canvases not arriving. In all seriousness, Miriam, there's significant anxiety about stuff, right? Yeah. You're shipping large canvases and post-it notes. There's a lot of supplies and people going to one spot. So there's always that basic anxiety. But from a more kind of experiential standpoint, what can make it fail? Confusion in direction, confusion in purpose. Yes, exactly. The hand going up. Yeah. But in a sense, Miriam, a lot of the things that can make a large workshop fail are the same things that can make a small workshop fail. Mm-hmm. And a really, really big one that I found is not setting climate and rules and roles in advance. Not saying in the beginning, these are the rules of engagement. This is how we're going to work together. This is how we expect you to facilitate each other. That's a really big one for a large event, is you need to set the conditions and tell people how they need to facilitate each other, because you don't have the same ability to be embedded. You can't come up to a problem table necessarily and say, cool, I'm just going to take an empty chair and just get my nose in it, because you have too many people that you're responsible for. So that's a big one. In a large workshop, you need to create the conditions under which people can facilitate themselves.
Bring the wrong people for the wrong reasons to the wrong place at the wrong time. And I think I've had that perfect storm, and any one of those is going to work against you. So let's just say timing. I've run workshops where, like, why isn't this working? No, it seems like a great team, seems like a great topic. Mm-hmm. It seems like, the right concept for the workshop, seems like the right facilitator. And I've had people come to me at the break and say, oh, Tim, don't worry about it. I can, it's budget planning time. I don't know why we're having this workshop right now. Every single person in this room is working 7 days a week. We've all been up all night, or I've had to do workshops right after a layoff announcement, for instance.
How would you continue the sentence, workshops fail if?
There is no clearly defined output and where that output should lead through.
A workshop fails when it's not embedded in the world of the participants of the workshop.
Mm.
When the participants of the workshop are irrelevant with regards to what they can bring to it. When it's not important to give them space and to be seen and to be acknowledged and appreciated for what it is that they offer, right? Yeah, and if it's not embedded in the overall context and the overall world where this happens, when you organize a workshop and it's about something that is ignoring or is pretending to happen in a reality that isn't there, then it's going to fail,
When the expectations aren't clear and the stakeholders aren't prepared. So when people just show up with, we're going to talk about sustainability today, and I'll just whatever, and then come with all these post-its and come with all your forms or whatever, and then 2 hours later, that was it. But if you think about the outcome and the output, if you think about the power that will be in the room, and if you really design a process to get the wisdom in the room, to really get the most use of the resources, then you get interaction, then you get inclusion, and you get impact.
Interesting question. So I'm going to answer the question as you asked, like what makes a workshop fail. And in my opinion, most of the workshops that I've done, there's always a team. There's a team. There's a facilitator. There's a team lead. There might be somebody who is on graphics doing graphic facilitation. There might be an environment team. There might be a tech team. There might be a team that does writing, of all of the assignments. There's the production team, which is putting out assignments and collecting the outputs and putting it into a journal format or some kind of usable format. I think the most important thing to make a workshop go well is communication between the team. Good, strong communication. Someone who can, so in my world, we use something called a team lead or a process facilitator. And the process facilitator, these are for large workshops, for like workshops 60 plus, right? Maybe even 30 plus. The process facilitator has to be able to translate what the facilitator and the client want and be able to communicate that to the other facilitators who are running the workshop to make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be. Participants have what they need at the moment that they need it. The space is ready for them to do work. We've captured all of their previous work. So if they need to refer that work is available for them. All of those things, it's all dependent on someone who is a good communicator and who can keep all those plates in the air. All the balls or plates spinning in the air. Like that, when it does go wrong, it's going to go wrong on the client side, which is never bad for us, because then what we're dealing with is emergence. And here's a topic that the sponsors who helped us design this did not realize. Do we want to address this right now and talk about it and fix it, or start to fix it?
Beautiful example of a growth mindset.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say communication is the number one thing, because if you don't know, or if you're in the dark, that's just a barrier for you to be able to truly be in service to the client's need during that workshop.
Thank you for staying tuned and listening to the show. I appreciate your attention, as I know how busy you are. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and engage by sharing your comments and thoughts, and visit workshops.work to download the one-page summary. I'm looking forward to seeing you back at the next episode, and I wish you a fruitful day.